in the online format. So yeah, it's streaming live now.
Okay, we just started, so we are going live. Okay, I'll start and then okay, I think we'll wait for a few minutes. So Bhaskar, did you got into the YouTube channel?
Yes, I can see the live stream link now.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Tom. Hi, Angela.
Hello, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I think we still have a few minutes.
We're scheduled to start from 11:30, so probably we'll just wait for 2 minutes and then
Take your time.
Yeah, all of our events start at whatever, but it's always 11:02 or 11:03 because everybody's always late on academia time.
Debo. Oh, unmute. Off. Zooming. Genau. Okay. Okay, so we'll start now. So hello, everyone across the world. Glad to be back with our second virtual annual meeting after a successful one last year. So first, I would like to thank Adriana for a wonderful keynote talk. So there's me, I'm Shohak Chakraborty, a PhD student at the City University of New York. So I will be facilitating today's session. So in this session, we will be talking about the opportunities in academia apart from the tenure track position. And we have with us today Ishani Das Gupta, postdoc at the University of Massachusetts Medical School. She will be moderating today's session, and we have a fantastic team of panelists with us. We have Angela Fowler, Thomas Gallagher, and Bhaskar Chipnani with us. So before we start, I would like to request all the viewers and the participants to drop in your questions on our YouTube channel. So Ishani, now the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Shohak, for the introduction, and welcome everyone to the STEMPeers Global Conference 2021. And as Shohak introduced the panel, so many of us are interested to stay in academia, but are not necessarily interested or to opt for the conventional tenure track faculty positions. And I think today's panel will help us explore the alternate careers in academia. And so it is my absolute honor to introduce our panelists today. So we have with us Dr. Angela Fowler, who is the director of the Office of Postdoctoral Scholars at the Indiana University School of Medicine, where she assists and organizes professional development workshops and career development programs for graduate students and postdoctoral scholars. And additionally, she also serves as a board member for the National Postdoctoral Association. Next, we have Dr. Bhaskar Chetnani, who is a senior intellectual property specialist at the Innovation and Technology Transfer Division at Rush University Medical Center. And he's responsible for managing the IP portfolio of the clinical physicians as well as research faculties, and also promoting the commercialization of the Rush technologies through licensing. And finally, we have Dr. Thomas Gallagher, who is a senior scientific writer at the UMass Chan Medical Center at the Gene Therapy Center. And Thomas has extensive experience in science writing. And prior to joining UMass, he was a full-time scientific writer at the UT Southwestern in the Center for Genetics and of Host Defense. So with that, I welcome all the panelists today for our discussion. And without much ado, I would like to kickstart this discussion. And so first, I would like to know from you guys about your career journey and what led you to this transition. So if you could share your stories with us. Wants to go first?
If no one's going to jump in, I'll go first.
Okay.
I went to grad school, got my PhD in biochemistry. I did my postdoc. I wrote fellowship applications to bring in funding, and I got those successfully funded. But then I really didn't like where my postdoc was going. I was having a hard time of things. And I decided ultimately I didn't want to continue on the career track in academia. So I looked at what do I do well? What do I want to do? And I looked at everything that I was doing in my postdoc, and I found writing was what I really enjoyed doing, and I felt like I was really good at doing. So the funding that I was on didn't allow me to have any outside income, but I felt like I wanted to get more experience in writing, so I left my postdoc, and I was a freelance writer for 3 years. And then I applied around for full-time writing jobs, and I got hired at UT Southwestern. So I moved there, and I was a full-time writer there. I really enjoyed that. I felt like it was what I really was best able to do, and I found my niche in science. Unfortunately, due to COVID-related budget cuts, the position there was eliminated. So I had to apply around again, and I got hired at UMass Medical School. So I'm here as a full-time senior scientific writer at a gene therapy center.
I can go next. So I did my PhD in biophysics from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. And after doing that, I moved to Northwestern University here in Evanston, Illinois, for my postdoc. So basically, I'm a structural biologist. And I did research for almost 12 years. To be honest, I actually wanted to get into the tenure track position because during the time of a PhD and also during a postdoc, that was probably the route which most people would go forward. I had no idea about what other options are there. But again, I think like Tom said that he enjoyed writing. I like to do experiments, but I saw that people who actually get their own lab eventually become managers. They don't really get to do experiments themselves after a certain point. And they basically are writing grants and things like that. So that is something which I did not really want to pursue, and I wanted to look into other options. So to be honest, I did not really know anything about technology transfer. And that happened through one of the conversations I had with somebody at Northwestern while I was applying for a very different job. I don't even remember what the position was, but something to do with the research manager or something. So he told me that there is a tech transfer office here at Northwestern, and they actually have an internship position. And that's how the conversation started. I applied for the internship. I did that internship for 6 months, and I think that's how I got introduced to tech transfer. And I also realized tech transfer is a very resourceful and blooming field, and every university who receives federal funding has a tech transfer office. So it is something that could be looked into more seriously if people want to look at alternate career options by staying in academia. So it's kind of an interface position between academia and business. And we can talk more about specifics when we dive in.
So I did my PhD at the University of Kansas in microbiology, where I worked on HSV1 and host cell interactions. I actually started at a small university. So I went to Pittsburgh State University in Pittsburgh, Kansas, which is a small liberal arts college. And so I'm a first gen college graduate, first gen PhD. And I, at that point, after I finished my PhD, I was still interested in becoming a PI. So I did a postdoc. I went to San Diego and did my postdoc at La Jolla Institute of Immunology, where I worked on viral immunology with Zika and dengue viruses. And during that time, I started to kind of realize that the whole, like my career related whole wasn't necessarily due to the interest in the organism that I was studying, like I thought it was, and it was due to something else. And I started exploring career options a little bit. There was a panel that came and talked to us because we didn't really have a career development team at LJI, but they were starting to create something when I was first there. So Dr. Nisha Kavanaugh from SBP in San Diego came and spoke with us, as well as a few other administrators, and she had a very similar role that I do now. And I was very interested in what she did with helping the postdocs, helping them succeed, helping them move on. So I started volunteering after that and made connections with other people in the field, such as Dr. Tracy Costello, who's connected with STEMPeers. And I found that I loved doing that work way more than I did research, even though I love doing research. And I knew I didn't want to be a PI because I just absolutely detested grant writing. It was not for me. So, well, Thomas loves to grant write, apparently. I was the complete opposite. I would be bored out of my skull if I sat for hours and hours in a day just writing grants. So I started pursuing this path, and I've been here since 2019. So.
Thank you for sharing your career stories with us. And it's really so interesting to learn about like how each of like our career trajectories are so different, and then yet we like ultimately land like it leads to the path which absolutely aligns with our interests so well. Yeah. So like I'm curious to know, like, what do you think is the key to know like about oneself that indicates that, okay, now you're ready to take the next step in your career?
I'll start.
Sure.
I would say every step along the way, you need to have a clear-eyed assessment of who you are, what you enjoy doing, and what you're good at. You know, you start out, I think everyone goes to grad school and you start out doing experiments, you learn how science works, you do your postdoc, you know, maybe you do a little bit more writing, you look around a little bit more and see what's around in the department, in, you know, your friends from grad school, where they've gone, what options there are. So I would say it's looking at yourself and looking around what possibilities there are. I know these for myself. I was kind of put on the track to go into becoming a PI and I never really looked around until I was really ready to get out of my postdoc. So my advice would be, like I said, number one, clear-eyed assessment of yourself. And number two, start looking around at what's in your university. Maybe just go on, other universities that you're familiar with and look at what are their job postings. Talk to friends that you have, and are there any non-tenure track jobs in their department? Would be my advice.
So I think, in my opinion, there is never a good time to determine, okay, I need to stop doing research and I need to switch careers now. I think it's a continuum, and you keep on have to work on your skills and identify areas where you actually want to work in. Like I said, for me, I wanted to work in the lab, but I think after a few years of research, when experiments didn't work and projects got screwed, you start to get a little shattered and honestly a little worked up at what am I doing wrong. And I think that kind of prompted me to really think about what I wanted to do. And clearly, I think tenure track was something that I did not really want to pursue, because I am goal driven, and I think it's really intense. And also mathematically, it's not possible for all PhDs and postdocs to become faculty. So I think it's on you to find the best way to move a career forward.
Yeah, so I'll add to both of those. I was definitely not the person that wanted to be the scientist at age 5, and that was what I wanted to be my whole life. So I'm probably unique in that aspect, where I've always been full of lots of interests, and I've been interested in so many different things. So I've always been keeping my eyes open of like what would be the next interest for me. With that said, I will say, yeah, there's never a time when it's like very solidly clear that it's time to move on. Especially in your postdoc. During your PhD, you have an end, right? You have, okay, I finished my PhD, done. But your postdoc is different. It has open-ended projects. You might have a fellowship, but they might end, and you can be put on grants and things. So it's a lot more vague. So it's whenever you are ready to move on. I will say that again, I like Thomas's idea of keeping clear-eyed and watching out for things. I will also say, if you're not sure about that, IDPs are a really great way to go. It's an individual development plan. If you don't know about them, look them up. There is a science one specifically that's called My Science IDP, and you can go through and check through interests, values, skills, and it'll give you like a starting point of what you could be, what could fit for you for a career. But otherwise, yeah, start exploring things. It might be difficult to do depending on where your program is, because some people have more career and professional development than others. If you do have career and professional development, seek it out. I know here at IUSM, Lauren Easterling and we offer all kinds of workshops and things that are free to come to. You just sit in, and how with the virtual world, it makes it even easier because it's set up online, and most of our grad students and postdoc just listen while they're doing experiments. So it's even less interactive. They don't have to leave the lab. And I know that there are other places like that. And if you don't have that, which, some places don't, we did not at KU. We just started at LJI when I was leaving, and I actually was part of growing that once I got interested in this field. There are things online that you can find. There are paid resources as well as free online resources, but it's never too early to start exploring these options, because sometimes you might need a skill build for these career paths. Like my volunteer experiences definitely impacted my skill building towards getting this position. If I hadn't had that, I wouldn't be near as qualified for it as if I didn't. So.
I just want to add one thing on top of that, just real quick. While you're a grad student, while you're a postdoc, you have a PI who's invested in you. And so while you're considering your career development and what you might want to do, discuss that with your advisor or your PI. They've likely seen people go into non-academic career roles. They might have connections, they might have, someone you can talk to about what you want to do individually. And so I think that's the best way to get individualized attention and advice.
Yeah, that's really good. I will also add to, use online resources too. Like LinkedIn is a great way to connect with people, to be honest. That's how I met Tracy Costello. And Twitter it might be kind of a weird resource, but I always spout the uses of Twitter, and you'll never know how important networking is until you're at that point. But it's always important to be growing a network and connecting with people and reconnecting with people as well.
Yeah, those were some great pointers by all of you. And yeah, I really like what each of you said, and especially what Tom said about reaching out to your PI, because at least from my personal experience, I've seen mentorship through a PI or any academic advisor is absolutely so essential in guiding you through your career path. And yeah, so that is very useful. So hopping on to my next question. So when you guys decided or realized, okay, this is the time when I'm going to take the plunge, I'm sure there was some preparation involved. So what resources did you find helpful in transitioning, in getting to your current position? Or was there any know-how that you followed, which you would like to share with us? Tom, you want to go first?
Sure. I'll say, at least for me specifically in scientific writing, it's very difficult because it's more apprenticeship based. There might be, courses out there that you could take. There might be, like a master's program you can do. But what I did was just working one-on-one with my PI as I was developing, writing grant applications, writing manuscripts, trying to kind of find all the nuances, the grammar language rules, the scientific writing rules, and just being able to learn one-on-one from a PI. And I think that's kind of just the way that science is inherently set up is, it's apprenticeship based. So I would make the most out of it while you have, a mentor, an advisor, someone who's going to take one-on-one time with you. And then I think a common thread, I think, from all three of us is trying to build up experience so that when you find what you want to do, you have the qualifications that you stand out among the applicant pools. And again, for me, what I did was just 3 years of freelance writing and editing. So once I got out of academia and I was on my own, it was mostly learned by doing or, quick Google searches. If I didn't know, I had to learn it on my own.
I just want to extrapolate what Tom just said. So I think for tech transfer, if you want to get into technology transfer, so having the internship, whatever I did at Northwestern, that was the key for getting me the job. And even if you look at all the entry-level positions for technology transfer offices, most of them need an advanced degree. It could be a PhD and some sort of experience in the field. And if you're able to get into some sort of practical training at any tech transfer office, I think that really adds on to a value. And again, like Angela said, it's LinkedIn and networking, which for me eventually led me to this job. So I think the posting that I'm currently in was advertised on LinkedIn. It was during Christmas when I guess nobody was looking around, and I just connected to the person there, and I got the first phone call interview. So having that resource, knowing about the field, and basically connecting with people working in the field, I think that really helps.
Yeah, so I started off as soon as I heard from Anisha Kavanaugh when she came for the panel about this area. I connected with her. I talked to her after the event, and then I set up an informational interview with her, and then I started down a path. I became invested in the career and professional development at LGI. So I started, I was already volunteering in my postdoc association and was treasurer, and then I became the career professional development chair after that, because I wanted to grow that for our organization, but also for myself as a skill that I could do this, of I could host these workshops and have them successfully. I also started connecting with people in my field, like I said. So I connected with Tracy Costello, who has been vital and is still a very important person in my life, as well as a mentor outside of, direct mentors, I guess. And she told me about a trainer event that was going on in Washington, D.C. And I was able to connect with people there. One person in particular was Lauren Easterling, who I do career and professional development here, and she told me about this position. I was able to apply. So when I say connections are important, they're very important. So I connected through people like that. I gained lots of skills through volunteering, and that's kind of a thing that you should be doing anyway, not necessarily, even if you want to be a PI, maybe a little bit less if you want to be a PI, but you can grow a lot of other skills that you would need later on, depending on what you're doing, right? We all have different roles and skills that we're discussing, but we all gain skills by volunteering and doing other things outside of academic research. So just being aware of what you're interested in and what skills that those kind of roles will need, and a great way to do that is through informational interviews, like I did with a few different people, that they can tell you, this is what I do on my day-to-day basis. This is how I got here. This is how I connected. So it's a very multifaceted process, and then just finding a position that was willing to take a chance on me, and because I had volunteer experience, but I wasn't like officially hired anywhere until this position. So they took a chance on me, saying, okay, can you do this full time now? So, and I knew that coming into this role, based on what other people said, that was going to be something that I just had to find someone that would be willing to try, and convince them to try with me. And so that was part of the role too. And that's also kind of part of the role when you're just switching out of any kind of field of, this is not something that you've been consistently doing full time. So they want to make sure you will be capable of doing it. But yeah, otherwise it's just really skill building. It's skill building and making sure that you have experience. Oh, and then on top of that, I also volunteered to, review resumes, CVs, etc. for the postdoc at my institutions. Like, hey, if you need some help, I can help you, or I can help you do a mock interview, things like that. So that's another aspect of it as well.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add one more point about the skill building, which Angela just mentioned. So I think as a postdoc and PhDs, we do actually develop a lot of soft skills in the lab. Like, for example, you need to manage budgets, you train master students. So you already have those kind of skills. And I think it's important that when you apply for a job, you identify those and rebrand those, just so that it aligns with the job requirement. So we don't appreciate what we are doing in the lab, but I think it's very important to rebrand and identify those soft skills and highlight those.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Bhaskar, you made. Like, I was just going to ask, like, my next question was that, like, okay, like, I mean, I don't know, like, at least I have faced this, like, being in academia for so long, I think we tend to shy away a little in advertising our skills. And so that's why I wanted to ask, like, how to advertise, like, your transferable skills for the kind of job in the academic setting, which, yeah, you already mentioned.
So
Thank you.
before you guys answer this question, I've got another question from one of the participants. So they're basically asking, like, how do you do internships within your contract time or contract period of your postdocs? Like, is there any options of doing part-time internships during your postdoc period?
I can go first. So I understand where the participant is going with this, especially because most of the students are international and they are on visa and they are restricted by the visa requirements. So I think that again depends on where you work and how flexible your boss is, to be honest. So for Northwestern, I think the requirement was that we dedicate 8 hours of time in a week for the internship. And I think, yeah, I did that 8 hours on the weekend or after hours and stuff like that. But it may not be possible everywhere in every university because some offices might have more requirements for the internship. They wanted to spend maybe 12 hours or 20 hours a week, which may not be possible with the visa issues and stuff like that. So again, I think you might have some issues based on where you are and what visa issues you are currently facing.
But you could also try to find informal experiences. So those are specific, like labeled in internships. And yeah, we ran into that trying to help people with getting experiences that they might be interested here, the visas and the internships. But you can do like informal experiences as well, and you might be able to figure out those kind of things through informational interviews and just discussing things with people that you would be interested in potentially working with or at least gaining knowledge from.
Thank you,
that is
Bhaskar
one thing.
and Angela.
Oh, just one thing I want to jump in. That's something you can negotiate in your postdoc. Again, I don't know how visa issues impact that, but for example, if you know, like, hey, I want to gain experience freelancing or interning or what have you, that's something you bring up when you're going to go interview for a postdoc. You can say, hey, I'm going to be working 60 hours a week, but I want to intern and I want to find time around my experiments to do that. Or, you know, I'll take the first year to get my project going. And then after 1 year, I want to start looking for, you know, opportunities to, you know, volunteer, intern, freelance, what have you, that you can build skill sets towards, you know, a non-tenure track career, or, you know, develop networking connections, what have you. So I would say, again, visa issues, funding issues aside, negotiate that with your postdoc mentor.
I will just add that sometimes that works and sometimes you get a really horrible mentor that doesn't care what you negotiated. So just keep that in mind as well. Hopefully you'll be able to see those red flags beforehand, but it's just not always the case. And if you get into a toxic mentorship, just know that it is not your fault. There are a bunch out there. I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you all for your insights.
So like moving on, so like I'm curious to know, like, what are the major difficulties or drawbacks that you've faced when I mean during your transition, or like have you ever accepted a role that you weren't very excited about or felt that probably wasn't the best fit for your interests? And if so, like how did you turn that experience to a positive one for your career? Bhaskar, do you want to go first?
Sure. So I think for me, the biggest challenge was the routine. So I ended my lab research on a Friday and I started my new role on the Monday. So I didn't really have enough time to actually go through or change my gears, if you want to call that. So I think working in an office, it's very different from working in a lab. It's time bound. You have deadlines. I mean, of course, you have deadlines in research too, but there's still more flexibility. So I think for me, the biggest challenge, at least for the first 6 months, was getting used to the routine of not working in a lab and working in an office, and doing stuff which I had not done in the past. Like there are a lot of paperwork, reporting requirements, budgeting, and all those things, which honestly I never did when I was a research scientist. So all those things took some time, but actually I really enjoy it now. Get to interact with a lot of folks in the finance, learn about how things actually work in the real world. So it took some time, but I think the routine was the biggest challenge for me.
I can go next. So for me, that was a little bit of it. I mean, it was definitely a different routine. I think my role probably has a bit more flexibility um, because I have a lot of different things to do. Like I interact with postdocs, I do email, I do community building, I do advocacy. So I have a lot of different hats, I guess. So that I think it was easier to transition for that. For me, it was the difficulty of starting over in a new institute where I didn't know anybody. So, and I'm still growing that, even coming up on 3 years, still meeting people, still meeting faculty, definitely still meeting postdocs because, postdocs are not here permanently, which is great. I want you all to do well and leave the nest, so to speak. But yeah, but then that means I'm growing relationships with those people coming up. So it's that was harder for like just starting over again because you start over again when you're a postdoc, and then you're starting over again with a new institution, new environment, everything like that. And so I think that was probably the most difficult transition between the worlds. I know there's a lot of people that have a lot of issues of, feeling like they failed because they left academic research, which please do not do that. Like 80% of PhDs leave academic research. I mean, it's definitely, they say all act, which actually we're getting away from using that term because it's just a bad term. And all act is actually the alternative path, academia is the alternative path in this case. So I know a lot of people struggle with that. I thankfully never did. Once I made a decision, I was like, yep, this is what I'm doing, and I'm happy to move on. So, but I know there are people out there that do struggle with that. I didn't feel like I was able to succeed, and you're still succeeding. You're just doing a different job. So.
Tom, would you like to go next?
Sorry there, I think I lost my connection for a moment. I would say for me, for scientific writing, the projects turn over fast enough that you enjoy the work that you're doing, when it's, something that, is right up your alley, is something that you're passionate about, something you feel good about. And for projects that you might not necessarily be in love with, you can get them done, get through them, and look forward to the next manuscript or grant application, what have you. So I'd say in my position, I'm fortunate enough that I don't really have to really dwell or focus on areas that are kind of negative or drawbacks. But one thing that it does is build a wealth of experience because there's so many different areas of science. There's so much different techniques, aspects, fields of biology that are even just within one center. That I feel like it's constantly a challenge to learn new things, but I do think that adds to your skill set in the long term.
Tom, just a quick, since I'm like personally invested in science writing and grant writing, I would just like to ask you, so like apart from like the R21s, of course, they are like a little competitive, and a lot of grants are not open to international candidates. And I know you won a grant from the American Heart Association. So do you want to share with us some of the grants which early career researchers can apply for?
I would say anything that's not government funded. So the American Heart Association is one that I'd recommend. Diabetes Association, American Cancer Society, or American Cancer Association. I would look at, there's a lot of different funding bodies that are open to absolutely everybody. So I know like NIH grants and NSF grants are restricted to only US born individuals, but there's a lot of different funding sources I've seen the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. If you're working on a specific disease, there's very likely a funding body out there that funds research just on that. So it takes a little bit more work, but I would put in for, whether it's a equivalent of an F31 for graduate students or an F32 for postdocs, or like I said, early career awards equivalent to an R21. I would say that there is sufficient funding out there, and at times they can be a little bit less competitive than the NIH because that's where everyone goes to. It just takes a little bit more work to try to find those.
There's a really great resource on John Hopkins' website, and I would have to dig to remember what it is. But if you look, you can find that there's a lot of grants listed that are open for international people as well as citizens. Also, the K99 is open for visa holders as well. So it's definitely a lot more competitive, but if you're interested in going in the PI route, it's like a vital one to have to help you find a position.
Thank you for sharing those. Yeah, I was working on, like since Tom pointed out, like I was working on the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation funded project, and like, yeah, they were like absolutely fantastic in terms of like financial support and like, yeah. So yeah. So coming back to the question I was asking, like, I mean, staying in academia, like, how do you advertise your transferable skills for the kind of job you guys are in? So if you could share some insights on that. Bhaskar, do you want to start?
Sure. So like I mentioned in my earlier point, that we do tend to learn a lot of soft skills while working in the lab. Like training students, managing budgets, presentations, speaking at conferences. I feel that all of these are skills that you get better at while you keep on doing it multiple times. So I think, like I said, rebranding those skills, and I think every job requirement needs specific skill sets. And I would say, instead of, whenever you apply for a job, instead of just using one CV or one resume, one cover letter, I would say that focus on the ones which are really needed for that job and highlight those. You can use your real life examples working in the lab as to why those skills are a fit for you. And I would just keep an eye on it and rebrand. I would say 80% of the skills, whatever you learn in the lab, you already have it. I mean, the others are things that you learn on the job. That's my take on it.
So I'm going to jump in because what he said is what we definitely advise our postdocs and grad students to do. You want to have a different resume and cover letter for each job. You want it to be tailored to that job. It's an advertisement of yourself. So a lot of people will just kind of like list things, but they don't really get emotional, or they don't really think about how it would pertain to the position. So really, think about it as a commercial or a trailer for you. That's how I like to describe it. You're giving a preview of yourself, of what you could give to that company or university. And I think this is such a very specific question, because you asked about the positions that we are in. But so what I would need for my position is completely different than what someone else would need. And even within the community, there's a lot of variation between whether or not you do career and professional development, or if you do advocacy or things like that. So you definitely want to highlight, you may not think that you have the skills, exactly what Bhaskar said, is that you have those skills, through your research, through volunteering. You just need to figure out how to translate that. Even if there's a job that asks for teaching and you haven't had formal teaching, but you've had teaching because you've mentored other students, you've done workshops, maybe not like you went to conferences and given presentations, and those are the similar kind of skills that you would need in teaching. Not all of them, but it would be better than saying, no, I don't have any teaching skills. So you just need to sit through and pick through and figure out what specific things you need, and what are the top things that the job is asking for, right? So there's a great resource that I always love to talk about. It's called jobscan.co. It will take a job posting and it will highlight keywords, and you can put your resume against it and it will match up the keywords to see how well you did matching up the words. There's a lot of algorithms now will spit your resume out if you don't match up the correct amount of keywords. But it also will help highlight what is important to those jobs, to figure out if you do or don't have those skills. Additionally, like, you don't want to undersell yourself either. And if there's a list of things that they're looking for, and you meet 50% of them, just apply. If it's like your dream job, just apply, because you never know if you could get it. If you don't try, it's always going to be a no. But if you do try, it could be a no, but it was going to be a no if you didn't try. So it's worth a shot. That wasn't very specific advice to my position, but again, I think it really it varies so much on what kind of skills the job will be looking for, depending on how it's listed. And you really just need to focus on putting your materials to those skills and really showing that you were the person for that job and you are the ideal candidate and they can't live without you.
I would say going towards, taking your skills in the lab and putting them towards, more general applicability. I think training in science does that better than almost any other profession. Mentoring, communicating, problem solving, focusing on safety, there's a lot that you can do that you need to put into like HR language. But as far as you standing out from the other people that are applying for that job, that's one of the things I was very self-conscious about. And so I would say, I think one of the things that's come up several times is getting experience. And I think that's going to lend you towards getting a job that you wanted. But I think the other side of that is if you're interning, if you're volunteering, if you're freelancing, what have you, if you get a part-time job doing, something you might want to make a career out of, also knowing that that is what you want to do. If you apply for a job and you get it, and then, a year into it, you really, really hate it, that does yourself, does the position, the company, your coworkers no good. You don't want to stick in a job for 30 years that you really don't like. So I would say, again, this has been brought up a couple of times, get experience where you can. That lets you know that this is a job that you're going to want to be doing. And that's going to also help you stand out from the other people that have done it. I think the most powerful thing you can say to put on your resume or put in a cover letter is, I've done this, I love doing this, I'm really good at doing this, I'm going to be here for as long as you will have.
I just want to add one more point to this. So I think for people who still have some time in the lab before they actually need to find another job, it's better to start looking at job postings right now and see what is needed in the job. And if you are having an internship opportunity, or if you have some other volunteer opportunity, you should try and build up your skill sets based on what's needed for the job, rather than waiting for the last minute and then struggling to find out some sort of skill sets that is missing. So again, that I feel might really help for people who still have time.
I completely agree. If I would have waited until my fellowship was ended and started skill building, I would not be here at this position, because I became interested well in advance, and I had already done some volunteer experiences in grad school, so I wasn't completely clean slate, but I was able to tailor my experiences towards building skills that I may have had holes in, that helped me get those positions. And then add about the cover letter thing that Tom said, the cover letter is also a really great place to explain why you're leaving academic research and moving on to a different career field, because, you know, it may not be obvious to the person, and depending on who is reading, and I know we're talking about academia, but you could have, you know, an executive assistant reading your information that doesn't know anything about how the science field works, or you could have a PI that's very focused in one area or something. So you know, you want to be able to have your documents explain why you're the best person, but to anybody that would read it, and not just very science specific language that or whatever your field might be, specific language, and so that it's able to be read across the board by anybody.
So I have a question for the panelists. So since I'm going to finish my PhD soon, so I'm interested to know that for all these non-tenure track academic positions, do you think a PhD is enough, or do you guys think that a postdoc experience is necessary and will, like, you know, rank you higher as applicants for these non-tenure track positions in the academia?
I'll start this one because mine is some specific answers. So for my position, you would need a postdoc because they wanted to have people that had experiences of postdocs to be able to relate to what they went through. So even though grad school is very similar, it's quite a bit different in a lot of ways. And so it was an experience type of thing if they wanted to have that. Not every postdoc director has postdoc experience, but for my specific role, they wanted to have that.
I think for positions in tech transfer, I think PhD or a higher degree is probably the minimum requirement. Postdoc is not necessarily a requirement. But again, I think if you have research experience, people tend to take you a little bit more seriously in the field because you have gone past the PhD training period and worked on real life projects more independently. So definitely, I think most people who get into tech transfer do have some sort of postdoctoral experience, not necessarily a long one, but at least a brief one, essentially.
I would say it's going to depend a lot based on what job you want to find yourself in. I know for scientific writing, I would say a postdoc is probably advisable because that's where you get a lot of focus on scientific writing. You know, I know at least for my grad school, the qualifying exam was writing an NIH style grant proposal, and then you have to write your thesis. But where you really start putting yourself out there as a competitive, as far as writing really good manuscripts, putting out competitive grant applications is in your postdoc.
Thank you so much for your insights.
So I had another question. So it was, so I was really curious to know, like, what activities in your career do you find like the most engaging or fun?
For me, I think the most engaging part was looking at crystal structures. By far, I think I really loved it. I still miss it actually, to look at diffraction patterns and getting to a crystal structure and looking at the crystal structures. So in my previous role, definitely that is something I really miss and I love doing it. In my current role, I think it's meeting with people and finally finding some sort. I mean, I work with a lot of agreements. I work with a lot of business folks. So I really like to get into that part a little bit more. How actually licenses happen, what are people looking at when they look at technologies and those kind of things. So building a license agreement is something I really enjoy doing now.
I really love engaging with people I loved that before, and I love that now. So just being able to connect with others and help them in their paths and figure out what they want to do, and even all the steps along the way. And then when I find out that they got the job they were applying for, it's so exciting and rewarding. One piece that I love doing that we haven't been able to do because of COVID is doing in-person events. It's super fun, especially when I can do like just silly community events like a craft hour, getting together with a bunch of postdocs who are like never done shrinky dinks before, and it just being a silly fun time, just connecting with people, and they get to let the weight go for just an hour or something of the stress of postdocs. So there are lots of things that I like about it.
I think mine's a little bit more boring. I like anticipating, if you're writing a manuscript or you're writing a grant, what are the reviewers going to challenge you on? And so I like kind of strategically thinking about building up, as solid a foundation in whatever you're writing on as possible. For example, in grant writing, one of the maxims is that your aims should be interrelated but not interdependent. And so thinking about, if aim 1 fails, how are aim 2 and 3 going to go? Is the reviewer going to come hard after, well, aim 2 doesn't really seem feasible. So building that up and anticipating what they're going to do. And I like that kind of strategy of back and forth, and they're going to give you comments, and then being able to rebut, well, you said this, but I think that's unfounded, or, you made this accusation, but here's the data that shows why we're going to be able to do this successfully. I kind of like that back and forth aspect of it.
So we have a question from the participants. So the question is, so what was the interview process like for each of your roles? So Bhaskar, do you want to enlighten us a little on
Sure.
that?
So yeah, like I said, so for this particular role, the job was posted on LinkedIn. It was during Christmas. I saw the posting. I reached out to the person. He was actually on my LinkedIn network. So following the break, I reconnected again. We met over coffee and discussed about the role. I formally applied for the position, and then I got a call from the HR. Went to the office. There were 3 senior people in the office who interviewed me. They basically wanted to know my background, my past experiences in research as well as in the field. And it was casual conversation. It was not very specific skill sets that they wanted to test out during the interview process. So they basically wanted to see if I was a fit for the role or not. And I think the technical portion was assessed by the person I actually contacted for the role. And yeah, I think after that I got an offer from the HR and I took it. So it was not too tough in my opinion. It was maybe 3 or 4 rounds or 3 or 4 meetings, I would say.
Sounded tough.
Mine was a
Angela,
bit
you wanna
more
go next?
involved. Yeah, sure. Mine was a bit more involved. So I found out about the role from Lauren over the summer when I was at the Train the Trainer event. I didn't really have the time to apply until later, so it was still open in October. I think that's when I applied. I had a in-person interview in December, and it was so they flew me in. It was a whole day, so we started out at like 8 a.m. and we finished around 5, and then I flew back out that night. It was a lot, yes. So I met with the people in the division, and more one-on-one with my current boss and my colleague that I work with, the career professional development, Lauren. And but I also had group meetings where I met with the postdocs. I had a lunch with them, and I also did a presentation about what I would like to do as the director of the Office of Postdoctoral Affairs, where did I see things going and what would I like to accomplish, where anybody who wanted to come could come. So it was a mix of faculty, staff, postdocs that were there. And I believe most of them, a lot of the group throughout the day contributed to whether or not they wanted to have me come in for the role. And then I was told I would hear by the end of December or December to January. And then I was offered the position at the end of January. And then I started in March. So mine was quite a long process, but that's pretty common in academia. So that's another reason why we say to start early, because it's not usually a quick hiring process either.
My job's a little bit different in that when I've applied for jobs, they give me a skill assessment. They'll give me manuscripts or just an abstract or the specific aims of a grant. And they'll say, here, edit this, give it back to us within 48 hours. And so you're editing for, content, you're editing for correctness, you're editing for grammar. There might be areas where you don't exactly understand what they're saying. And so you have to give them comments, if you're trying to say this, use this. And so it's fairly high pressure to give that back to them. And then for the jobs that I've applied for, after that, it's more so just them getting to know you, making sure that it's a personality fit.
Just following up a little on that, like I know, like in the post-pandemic era, I know like things are slowly getting normal and like there are a lot of on-site interviews, but still, I've seen like there are several areas where they have like online interviews also. So I would just like to ask, are there any specific online interviewing tips you would want to share with us?
Just check everything beforehand. So make sure that you are, you've got the right camera shot. You don't have things showing in your background, or you have a neutral background. Like I have the Space Hubble stars.
Yeah.
So, things like that, checking your connection to make sure it works, or if it doesn't work, go somewhere that it does work, or have a phone in option so that you have a proper connection. But all those things, they may not seem like a big deal, but they absolutely can be a big deal. And you don't want your interview to fail and be flustered just from that of your connection dying or something.
I mean, I can only imagine how difficult it must have been. Like you had an in-person, like throughout the day interview, to do that online and to keep the person who's interviewing you invested for such a long time must be a challenge in itself.
I was applying almost exactly a year ago right now. So the position that I'm in, and I applied for several other positions as well, were entirely online. And so I would second everything that Angela just said. Have the backup number in case your internet connection goes down, be able to call in. One thing that I do is, so I have my computer, I have my screen, I would have another screen, or I usually use a television right behind it. So if I have notes, if I have something else, I can kind of keep my eye line. And I have, what I'm looking at is right behind the screen or right behind the camera.
I honestly don't have anything to add to that. I have no experience in online interviewing. But again, in my opinion, people with working from home situation, they are more lenient and relaxed now. I don't know how that is when you interview. So, of course, whatever Angela and Tom mentioned are very important. But I think people also understand that we're all crammed up in one space. So they don't mind background noises that much, I think. Not sure.
I would imagine pet interruptions are always welcome too.
Yeah. Yeah, we wouldn't mind that. So just one last question from the participants. So they want to know, so what are the, in your respective career roles, what are the future options down the line in terms of career growth? And so,
Tom, do you guys think that at some point of time your roles become, or your job become monotonous, or it's more interesting?
So I can answer that first.
Yeah.
So I think tech transfer has a lot of opportunities for future growth. So for example, we look at the research part of technologies and also the business side of things. We look at intellectual property. So there is a lot of room for diversification. So if you decide what part of your job you really love in the tech transfer field, you can actually specialize and do that in your next role. So like, for example, you could be a business person, or you could be a patent agent or a patent lawyer. So I think the avenues are very, very broad, and there are a lot of things that you can explore in the tech transfer field specifically.
So there's there's a lot of room for growth, but not necessarily like in my office, right? So there's a lot of different administration positions. Sometimes people in my role will kind of grow and have their role develop into a tenure track position, depending on where they are. You know, you can move up the associate dean, blah, blah, blah scale if you're interested. So there is definitely growth, and it really depends kind of on the institution itself, on how they have things structured, and what they like to do as far as like hiring upper administration positions.
I have seen job postings for like director of writing. Certain companies, especially larger ones, will have, you know, kind of like leadership positions in writing. Large like cancer institutes will have a director of writing. So there is room for advancement, but I'm very happy in the position that I have right now. And as far as monotonous, one of the things I really enjoy about it is, you know, how many, you know, new things come in front of me, you know, all the time, new projects, new manuscripts. The science is only ever growing, you know, as we bring in more people, as we have, you know, people start new projects. I don't think there's any risk of it becoming monotonous.
So, so before closing today's panel discussion, any last piece of advice you would like to give to an aspirant who's willing to who's looking to make the career change? Oscar, do you want to start?
Sure. So I think in my personal experience, I think folks should be a little flexible. I know the maybe the intent initially was to become a PI, but I think research is very unpredictable. Experiments may not work, projects get scooped, manuscripts may not come out. So I think having an open mind and being flexible is something I really advise everybody. And again, like I mentioned, it's mathematically impossible for all of us to become PIs. There is not enough funding, there is not enough positions. So we have to find what is best for us. So just keep an open mind. If things work out great, you should definitely try and be a PI. But if not, then you should definitely have some backup options. And backup options are not bad. They're just another way to get to where you want to go to.
And they don't necessarily have to be backup options. They could be your first option. It's your life, you know, and you're the one my brain is done, apparently. You're the one that's leading this life. So, you know, it's up to you how you want to shape it. There was a great piece of advice I heard a while back that follow your curiosity instead of your passion. Passion burns out and will burn you out. So follow your interests and your curiosity and see where that leads you. And it's okay to change careers multiple times. You don't have to stay with one path throughout your life. So if you do get in a new career and decide that maybe it's not right for you, or you want to explore something else, you know, it doesn't have to be a straight line. You can have a curvy, wavy, whatever, you know, try all kinds of things. Again, it's your life, and ultimately you're the one that's living it, not others.
I would just say, if you're looking around, if you're exploring, reach out to someone. If you're interested in, you know, writing or academic affairs or patents or anything, almost everyone loves talking about what they do or how they got there. If you're interested, you see someone at your university or another university, and you think that might be a job you want to pursue, send them an email. I would say there's a very high likelihood that they're going to be enthusiastic about it and want to talk to you about their career.
Thank you so much for sharing all your valuable resources with us. Like, it was really very informative, the session today. And I personally learned a lot from today's session. I'll remember what Angela said about the curiosity thing. So what was most interesting for me was like you three are from such diverse roles. I have such diverse roles within academia, and it was really very exciting and insightful to know about all your different experiences. And I would just like to reiterate a common point you all made about how important it is to build connections and how networking is absolutely essential, whether it is in academia or industry, and how informational interviews go a long way to shape up the career path you want to take. And with that, I would just like to say that STEMPeers here does such a fabulous job in building a community for STEM professionals, and where you can establish connections and find mentors for life. And so tomorrow we have another exciting panel where the panelists will talk about how they empower society and community at large. And this session will be at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So do tune in again. And thank you very, very much, Bhaskar, Angela, and Thomas, for doing this for us. And yeah, it was a it was a pleasure having you guys on board. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you.